Catherine Henderson Stanka. My grandmother was Myrtle Harriet Hardaker, and she was the youngest of the 7 Hardaker children. And my father is Philip Henderson, and that's how I'm related.
My name is Lee, or as Leone Hillard McLean, from South Hadley, Massachusetts. My grandmother was Florence Hardaker and married Gustav Arno Hillard, and thus I became a Hillard. They had my father, Leonard Watson Hillard, and he married Eunice, my mother.
Hi, I'm Steve Hardaker, Julie and Ken Hardaker's youngest son, brother of David and Mary Ann. I am married to Kathy Ammon Hardaker, and we have 2 boys, Michael and Joseph.
Hi, my name is Kathleen Ammon Hardaker. I married Stephen Hardaker, and I work at Monmouth University, so my children could have free tuition. So that's great. Oh, we live in Brick right now. We lost our house in Sandy, but we had family and friends that all helped, and we're all back and all happy, and we're a good family again.
I'm David Hardaker. I'm the son of the other David Hardaker.
I'm Lynn. I'm the eldest daughter of Bud and Charlotte Hardaker. Live here in Pompton Plains, and my eldest daughter and only daughter is hiding behind me is Brittany. So my claim to fame is being Bud and Charlotte's daughter.
I am Brittany Hardaker. I am the daughter of Lynn Hardaker and the granddaughter of Watson and Charlotte. I can't really call him Watson. He hates when I call him Watson. He goes by Bud. He even hated his own mother when she called him Watson. Grandma Hardaker named him that, and he was forever telling me that him and his brothers were always going at it, but Grandpa was always the troublemaker in the family. I, however, am not. I am the writer, so I should have been more prepared, but I'm using my notes as a reference. I just want to say that I'm glad that I could be here today, celebrating and spending time with family and friends, and the great additions that we've made to our family.
I'm Jonathan Mank. I'm the son of Ray and Mary Ann Mank, or Mary Ann Hardaker. I live in Pennsylvania, near Scranton, Wilkes-Barre, and I work for Coca-Cola.
Hi, I'm Ray Mank, married to Mary Ann Mank. I have 2 children, Jonathan, who just spoke, and daughter Michelle, who unfortunately is not here because she's celebrating a 4th anniversary up in New Hampshire this weekend. And we live in Dallas, Pennsylvania, which is the original Dallas, the first Dallas in all the United States.
Hi, I'm Mary Ann Hardaker Mank. I'm the daughter of Ken and Julie. My brothers are David and Stephen. My husband, Ray. I have 2 children, Michelle and Jonathan, and we live in Dallas, Pennsylvania.
My name is Sharon Hardaker. Before now, my husband, Skipper Hardaker.
I'm Julie Hardaker, and I'm Ken Hardaker's wife. And I'm the mother of Stephen and Dave and Mary Ann. And I live in Whiting, New Jersey, in the Crestwood Village, which is a retirement community and which I like very much. And I used to line dance, but since I had my little fall, I don't line dance anymore. And I'm very happy to be here. It's so nice to see people that I haven't seen in umpteen years. But, of course, I've seen Bud.
Hi, I'm Dave Hardaker. My father was Ken Hardaker, the son of Frank and Jenny Hardaker. I currently live in Cranberry. I'm married to my wife, Julianne. I have 2 boys, David and Daniel, and I'm a lawyer.
Hello, my name is Roy Knuckles, and I'm with the Hardaker family by virtue of marriage to the young lady sitting to my left.
I'm Karen Hardaker Knuckles, and I live now in Coatesville, Pennsylvania, and I am George Hardaker Jr.'s daughter and George Hardaker Sr.'s granddaughter. George Hardaker Jr. and Bud were first cousins.
Hi, I'm John McLean. I'm here because my wife, Leone Frances Hillert, um, is related somehow. Her father's name was Leonard Watson Hillert, so that's some sort of a tie-in. And other than that, I'm not sure exactly how it is, but I know they're all related, and I try to get her down here once in a while to see her family, since they seem to be away, except for the Jack Hardaker's kids, um, who lives in Massachusetts, are quite near, and Lee's really close to them. And that's all. And my wife's over there. I guess you've spoken to her, or you will be speaking to her. And it's a great time to be down and see a lot of people I haven't seen in years. I used to fly down and see them, land at the airport down here, and come in.
Hi, I'm Chris. My father is Bud Hardaker, and I have three kids, Janelle, Taylor, and Angelina, and we live up in Oak Ridge.
My name's Angelina Conahay, and my grandpa's name is Bud Hardaker, and that's how I'm related to the Hardaker family.
My name is Jessica Hardaker. I am the daughter of Kenneth Hardaker and the granddaughter of Watson and Charlotte Hardaker. I live in Wayne, New Jersey. I am soon to be the mother of the next Hardaker.
This is our peach Coogan. This was from Grandma Hardaker, and it used to be round with the peaches in the center and a round pan. But Mary Ann of Pennsylvania makes it this way, which I think is a very good way to make it. Now we go on to coconut cream pie. The coconut cream pie is a Hardaker recipe that came to us from Julie Hardaker, who got it from her sister and somebody else, I don't know, and it originated from the Town Tavern in Newark. And it is delicious.
I unfortunately happened to inherit the name Watson from my grandfather, who was born over in, and I'm not sure whether he was a Yorkshire or a Lancashire. But anyhow, both my grandmother Eva and Watson came from England. As a young girl, Eva was walking down one of the streets, and she sees this Hardaker's butcher shop. Well, she couldn't wait to get home and said to her mother, "Ma, I saw the funniest name downtown. It was called Hardaker's Butcher Shop." And, little did she know what was in store for her. That somewhere along the line, she met Watson Hardaker, and they got married, and they had 7 children. James was the first one. My father, Frank, was the second, and then there was Jack. And after Jack came, I believe it was Florence, and then Leonard. I'm not quite sure of that. And then there was George and Myrtle, who was the last of 7 kids. Over in England, Watson was a gardener on a large estate over there in England. And him and Eva, somehow or other, they met in Holly, New York, and they got married. And he worked in the, where they have the granite, the same as they have up in New Hampshire. And he settled down in Holly, New York. And she had a brother who came over from England too, and his name was Robinson, and he settled in Medina, New York. Then Watson and Eva decided, I guess, the work got to be too much for him working on this granite stone. So they came on down to Holyoke, Massachusetts, where he decided to go to work in the Far Alpaca, which was a thread mill. And I assume that's where he finished his working days, because Watson didn't live very long. I understand he was in his late 30s or early 40s, and back in them days when they had flu epidemics, pneumonia epidemics, he caught it and he passed away. So Eva raised them children for quite a while by herself. Now, as it goes along, yeah, the address that they had there was 34 King Street, and my father and Uncle Jim were the two oldest, and they both worked, and they helped build that house on 34 King Street. It was a house where, as we kids grew up, we all migrated to 34 King Street, and we had all kinds of picnics, and Christmas time, everybody went to 34 King Street. And usually Uncle Jim played Santa Claus, because him and his wife, they didn't have any kids, and he wanted to do something, so he was the Santa Claus. He was married to another English lady, and her name was Claire Holgate, and both of them, they worked, they saved their money, and he was a loom fixer for the Far Alpaca. I don't know what she did, but they had opened a small store, and she ran the store for quite a while he worked, and on the weekend he would help out in the store. Let's see, okay. Yeah, I got that. My father worked for the Dean Steam Pump, which had manufactured pumps for anything and everything. And what he did was, when he first started to work there, he worked in the erecting room. He worked his way up to be the foreman there, and in fact, he was a fixture. The engineers used to call at our house when we were kids, or even when we lived in Jersey, and say, "Frank, something's wrong with this pump. We can't get it to work. How do we do it?" And I remember my father saying, "You're the engineers. I only put them together. You tell me why it won't work." "But we don't know, Frank." "Well, what do you want from me?" "Well, you've got to come down here and help us get it going, because we can't get it going." My father slammed the phone down, go back to bed. Next thing you know, around morning, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, my mother get a phone call. My dad called, "Ma, pack my suitcase. I got to go to Georgia. I got to go to Canada. I got to go to California. I got to go to Texas. I got to go to Oil City, Pennsylvania." But I understand why, because I've worked with engineers, and most of them, like some other professions, they don't know how to do it. They have the practical experience. They go by theory and they say, this should work, that should work, but all their theirs and those don't work out that way. Oh, because I've had it happen to me the same way when I started working my way up the ladder, and I got to a higher position. They'd say, "Bud, how do you do it?" "Hey," I'd say to the other foreman, "if you can't do it, you're gone." Oh, it's one of them things where if you don't have practical experience in doing something, don't try to tell the person that can do it how to do it. But anyhow, my father was one of these strong, bull-headed Englishmen. When he worked for the Worthington Pump, or I should say the Dean Steam Pump, he would quit there periodically and go to work for Kelly Springfield, Far Alpaca, because my father, or I like my father, don't like to be told that you have to do something. That's what my mother used to say. I have 4 boys. 3 of them I could tell what to do, but that one, I could never tell him he'd have to do something. But she says, I learned a lesson. She says, one day I says, hey, Bud, will you do this for me? He says, yeah, sure. And then I come back and I says, hey, Ma, you got me to do anything else? And my mother said, oh, did I learn something? If I ask him to do it, he'll do it. If we tell him to do it, no, he won't do it. Oh, it's, it's a funny world, and that's the problem today. But anyhow, I had 4 brothers, or 3 brothers, and myself made 4. We were all in the service. Stan went in first. He didn't volunteer. He was drafted, and he went to Quonset Point, Rhode Island. And while he's standing there in line, all of a sudden you hear, "Hey, Stan!" He turns around, and guess who it was? It was that girl over there's father. And they 2 of them look at one another, and that's an odd occasion for 2 people in the same family to go to the same boot camp. Oh, but anyhow, it's one of them things. And then back in 1930, I'm going to back up a little bit. My father's company was bought out by the Worthington Pump down here in Harrison, New Jersey, and he commuted back and forth when he could get a ride, mind you, because there wasn't many cars in them days, from Kearney up to Holyoke, which was about, back in them days, a 4 or 5 hour run. And finally, after 3 years, I remember, because I was there, and I was only, let's see, I was probably 10 at the time. My mother says to my father, Frank, I've had enough. You're going to have to go back and quit. I can't raise these 4 boys by myself. He said, but this is a depression. She says, yeah, I know it's a depression, but I can't do this anymore. So Frank went back and he told them at Worthington Pump, I'm going to have to resign. My wife wants me back, and she can't raise 4 boys all by herself. So they sent him into the office, and they asked him what the story was, and he told the big shots, and they said, you're not leaving. How old are your boys? Stan was 13, Jack was 11, 12, and they said, fine, we're going to move you down to New Jersey. They can ride with the moving company, and your 2 other boys, me and Kenny, they brought us down by Greyhound bus, and they paid for everything. And this was during the heart of the Depression. Oh, my mother, she didn't have a leg to stand on then, but we came down here, and the worst part about that was any of you people that lived and born anything about New England, you got your winters, and we had all kinds of sleds, toboggans, you name it, we had it. And my dad says to us kids, don't bring any of that with you, because we don't get snow in New Jersey. Well, lo and behold, the first year we get down here, and that was 2 weeks before I become 11. That was the worst birthday I ever had, because here I am transferring from Massachusetts to New Jersey, don't know nobody, and I'm going to be 11 years old on the 11th. Yeah, I was born 11/11. Now, how many people here can tell me, without anybody else knowing, what year I was born? How many people here know how much 11/11 is? 22, right? That's when I was born, 11/11/22. And I used to use that when I used to go for a job and I used to say, well, how old, when's your birthday? And I used to say to people, well, what year were you born? Well, I just added two together, and the funny looks I'd get. I said, you don't know how much 1111 is? You know? But you want to bring, okay. But anyhow, we is getting back to the point where we're in the service, and Jack was drafted into the Army, and he was the youngest boy scoutmaster in the state of New Jersey when he left to go in. And when he down to Fort Bragg, North Carolina, one of the boys there took an epileptic fit. And nobody knew what to do, but he did, and he took over. And from that point, they called him in and told him when he finished boot camp, he was going to officers candidate school. So he went down to Aberdeen, Maryland. He went to school there, and during the war, he was over in Okinawa, and as everybody knows, if you're in the service at all, you don't light lights in the middle of the night, and they were being attacked by the Japanese, and he couldn't find one of his boots, and he put a flashlight on, and all you heard, put the light out. Oh, and anyhow, when he come back out of the service, we lived in North Arlington, him and I and my wife and I, and he was so used to giving orders in the service, he couldn't take anymore. He was a tool maker at Western Electric. So he got his commission, he went back in again, and when he retired from the Army after 20 years, he came out as a lieutenant colonel. And Stan, he was the 104th and the oldest one. That lucky devil never left the United States. By the time he finished boot camp, he went to Michigan, then he went on to Cape May, New Jersey, and he finished his time up there. And I went out to Great Lakes for the Navy, and I finished machinist mate school, and then they were asking volunteers to go and do different services, PT, boat, and submarines. And I decided I was going to go in the submarine service. So when I came home, I told my mom and dad, I'm going to come to London, Connecticut. I'm going into submarine service. Well, my mother had a fit. And what I did, I got up in the middle of the floor and I said, Ma, do you see these? Do you see these? I'm going to come home with them, or I don't want to come home. Because, as you know, in submarine service, when you get depth charge, you don't come up, you stay in an iron coffin, you know. And Kenny, he went in, he was with the Weather Bureau, and he was stationed over in England, and he was there for, I guess, maybe about a year or so, something like that. And he got transferred down to the Panama Canal Zone, and that's where he finished his time up down there. It's a funny world how things do happen. Let's see. And going back now to taking my father's family, as Uncle Jim was the only one during that war that was, he was in the Navy. He was the only one that went in. And he, as I said, he worked for the Dean Steam Pump and all that. Now his brother Jack, who none of his family is here today, he has two daughters, two granddaughters that are up there in Holyoke. Jack worked for the Holyoke Street Railway as a motorman, and then he worked his way up to be the head of the union in the motor vehicle industry. And he was a good friend of the president of the company, and they got along pretty good, and they had their ins and outs. And then after Jack, he had one boy, and we called, his name was John, but everybody called him Junior. And he, believe me, was like his father. Uncle Jack would turn a nickel over 10 times before he'd spend it. Look at Lee over there laugh, because this is a funny one. When they were kids, both Leonard and Junie, we call him Junior, no matter what everybody else says. They used to go to New York City, okay? And everybody knows what the blocks are long in New York City. Well, they'd want to go someplace that was just 8, 10 blocks away. And they'd say, well, let's take the subway, it's only a nickel. Junie say, I can't spend a nickel. I got to save that for something else. And he would make them, because he wouldn't go walk 8 to 10 blocks just to go to the next place in New York City. Am I right, Lee? You know, it was funny. And then Florence was her grandmother, and she went to England one day. I don't know whether you know that or not. She went to England with her mother to visit her father. Well, Aunt Florence, from what I understand, never saw a redhead. Didn't know what red hair looked like. Well, when she gets over there, her grandfather over there had beet red hair and a big beard. Okay? According to the story that I get, she screamed she wouldn't even go near him all the time she was there, because she couldn't imagine somebody with a bright red beard and a bright red hair. Then, you know, it's funny how kids are. But then she married a Gus Hillard, and he was, believe me, her grandfather was one of the nicest guys you'd ever want to contend with. He had his, you know, and he also worked for the Holyoke Street Railway as a motorman. And everybody, I don't care who it was that knew Gus, anybody in the Hardaker family, they just praised Gus. I don't know whether you know it or not, but he was gassed in the First World War. His own people gassed him. He was, you know, he was German heritage, and he got gassed by the Germans, and that's why he had trouble breathing and whatnot, because evidently, from what I understand, he didn't get that gas mask on quick enough, so he got gassed by it. And then there was Leonard was one of the other boys, and he worked for a bakery. He was a delivery man for a bakery, and he married a French girl, and my mother was French. And my mother said to Leonard, please don't marry that girl. I know there's good and bad. There's good French like I am, but that French that she comes from, there are absolutely no good. And we all know the English have the Cockneys. Oh, but he didn't, he married her anyhow. And they had 2 kids, a girl Gladys and a boy Leonard. Now, fortunately, I should say, likely, Gladys was a Hardaker through and through, and the boy was a Frenchman through and through. He looked just like his mother's side of the family. And Leonard and her were getting a divorce, and he loved them kids to pieces, and she was fighting to get the kids, which, you know, it's normal, but whatnot. And those 2 were inseparable, 2 of them. And Leonard just couldn't get over the fact that what was happening. And he had this bakery route, and he would cross this railroad every day. And what happened was he got to the railroad this one day, and all of a sudden his truck stalled, and he had his little dog with him. And of course, he was killed outright when the impact from the train. And the little dog was not hurt, period. but the police or the medicals that got there couldn't get into that truck because the dog wouldn't let them. Well, Karen's grandfather was the first one of the family to get there, and because he knew Uncle George, that's how they got Leonard out of the truck. Uh, Gladys, too, as I told the other people, went into become a nun, but in her final vow, she had changed her mind, and she went into and she had a complete nervous breakdown, and she had a bit of put away, and and then she just died there. But believe me, I can remember Gladys. Not so much Sonny. My younger brother Kenny, he used to keep in touch with Leonard, and then all of a sudden that stopped. And Lee happens to know one of my cousin Leonard's two girls. They had four, right? He was supposedly had twins, and one died first, and then the other, and he has the two daughters that you know. Okay. But he used to write back and forth to Kenny, and then all of a sudden he stopped. But her father one day went into a bank up there in Holyoke, and he saw the name Hardaker as a teller, and he asked her if she was related. She didn't want to know from nothing, because there was a bad separation there. But that's how family things grow and whatnot. Oh, let me see what else I got here. Oh yeah. Oh, there's another one. You know George Hardaker over there? You know George Senior? You know George Senior. Okay. Well, George Senior, Karen agrees with me. That man could sell ice cubes or an igloo to the Eskimos. He was in the felt industry for felt hats, and he worked for a company called Lockport Felt up in New York State. And he used to come periodically to an Eastwood Neely company across the river in Belleville, where we lived in Kearney. He used to come and visit. Now, he was married to an Evelyn Stackpole, and they had two boys, George, and the second son's name was Albert, but nobody ever knew him but Tink. The father gave him the name of Tinky, and where he ever got it, I've never found out, but Tinky was Tink, and I called him the trader. He went from being a Yankee to a Southern boy down in Alabama. And when I talked to him on the phone a couple of times, I said to him, "Hey, where'd you get that rebel-sounding voice? You're a Yankee." And he'd laugh, you know. He says, "Yeah, I know, you know." But yeah, him and I keep in touch every once in a while. In fact, I asked. He said he was going to go into assisted living, but it seems they changed their mind. Anyhow, I got Albert knows me, and they live in the Forts, Alabama, and his first wife, Wanda, she was a little Polish girl from Worcester, Massachusetts. Tinky went to Worcester Tech, graduated from Worcester Tech, and he met this girl, Wanda. And believe me, from the time I remember meeting her up in Massachusetts when they came with their first little one, Valerie, I have never seen a husband and wife that look so much alike with their facial features, you know, and it was just amazing. And back in them days when she came down with breast cancer, they didn't know what to do or how to do it, and she left Tink with the three girls. And how he survived bringing up three girls is, well, it must have been hard for him to do that. Now, Uncle George her grandfather traced the genealogy of the Hardakers back in, I think it was the 1950s, from someplace in Ohio. Uh, at that time, there was only 35 families in all the United States with the Hardaker name. And most of them were all related to Eva and Watson. There are a few other families of which my father went. In fact, my father was in a Masonic order, and he met one in Jersey City, and darned if his name wasn't Frank Hardaker. And then, not, oh, was it 2, 3 years ago, I'm reading in the newspaper, and I see a Florence Hardaker died in Methuen, New Jersey. So I sent the article to Lee. I mean, you know, how many Frank Hardakers and Florence Hardaker? It's ironic how things do happen. But getting back to George, when he traced the genealogy, Hardaker originally, believe it or not, are from Germany. Our name was spelt back then Hardacher, Hardaker. And the reason I get a big kick out of that, there's a German family that lived across the street from when we lived up there with Chris, and his name was Fritz. And he said to me, when I introduced myself to him, he puts his hand on my shoulder and he says, "Ach, you're German." I said, "No, I'm English." And following up with that, when I worked for aircraft radio, I met a woman she was in the personnel department from Norway. And she says to me, "Hardaker?" "Yeah." She said, "That's English spelt, right?" I said, "Yeah." She said, "Do you have any relatives that live in the fjords in Norway?" I said, "Not that I know of." But she says, "There's 2 sections in the fjords. There's the Hardakers that spell it like you do, and there's the other ones that are Hardakers. They spell it Acher. And following up on that, I also found there's Hardakers that live in Ireland, but they spell it Haracre, Hardaker, you know. So it's funny where you find out where and how where you came from. That you really don't know. And the reason why the Hardakers went to England, because there was a potato famine. And when they got over there, using the German name was not good, so that's why they dropped the Acher and made it Aker. Yeah, that's I got all that right down here, right. And going back now to the last one in the family was Aunt Myrtle. She was the last of 7 kids, and the only one in that family that went through high school, and she went on to business school, because my father went as far as the 5th grade. Uncle George, I understand, didn't go any further than the 3rd grade, and the rest of them were, I guess, anywhere between the 3rd grade up to the 7th grade. None of them went any further but Aunt Myrtle. And she not only got herself educated, she married into her first husband. She was married twice. And her first husband, his name was Francis Case. And how she met him was through her sister Florence. Well, it seems as Francis Case and his family were big farmers in Connecticut. Not poor farmers either. And but he wasn't a very nice guy. And he used to take it out on Myrtle 3 times, beat her up. And finally, my father decided, enough's enough, you're not going back anymore. And him and George, that's Karen's grandfather, they went down and they took care of him. He wasn't going to give Myrtle a divorce. You know, back in them days, for a woman to try to get a divorce wasn't easy. So after they got finished with him, she got her divorce. And then she met Philip when she worked for him at Mount Holyoke College for girls, which was, I don't know, I assume it's today is elite as it was back in them days. Is it? Uh, she was the secretary, I believe, and they hit it off, and him, my Uncle Phil, and Dr. Norman Vincent Peale were first cousins. And when they wanted to get married, he asked Dr. Peale to marry, and Dr. Peale wouldn't marry him because they were both divorced. It seems unreal, you know, but some ministers stick to what they do, and he just wouldn't marry them. So I don't know where or how they got married. That I know, but I do know that part of the story. You know, Uncle Phil, after being the dean of girls, he left to go to Western Reserve out in Ohio, which today is Case Western Reserve, which is a unique college. In fact, there's a woman that goes to our church. She hailed to Case Western. She also went to Ohio State University, but you know what? I had a son. I say I had. He passed away. He also went to school in Ohio, a small town with 3 little words: Ada, Ohio, and that was Ohio Northern Law School. He drove his mother and I crazy. He wanted to go to law school after he finished Kean University. His mother said, "You want to what?" "I want to go to law school." So he applied to, I don't know what, Ma. What? Ma, how many? About 50 law schools?
Well, that was after he left.
Yeah.
After he left, whatever the other name of that,
Ohio Northern, yeah. He went to Pace University. He didn't like it there. He took a year off. He went to Pace. He didn't like it. He took a year off, and I says, "You take a year off, buddy. You're going to stay. You're going to go to work." And I said, "Well, well, he did. He went to work. Work, what he called it, up in Smoke Rise. You people know where Smoke Rise is here. It's one of the elite sections." And he sat up there in the booth allowing the cars to come in and out. But he had more girlfriends up there than you could. Grant had little liver pills to shake a stick at. But he went to Ada, and I was telling the ladies over there about the story. And Chris, you remember that story, Chris? What? About Jimmy, about the night we slept in the motel.
The horror movie. Yeah, there was a horror movie, and there was a thing they called the incubus in the movie, and he was dreaming about it, and he was also talking to my dog at the same time, and we couldn't get any sleep. He's going, "The incubus is coming, Sheba. Come on, Sheba, baby." All night he was up.
and then he kept saying, "You won't let them."
They won't let me stay here.
Yep.
No, they'll take me home.
Yeah, he didn't want to stay there.
You gotta tell him, Stephen,
He
that.
was a mama's boy. He wanted to be home.
Yeah, she was in stitches, and I started to laugh, you know. And the best part about it was the next day when we took him to go, I said he met this young man that just came in from North Carolina, and he was still unloading his car, and him and Jimmy seemed to hit it off. And otherwise, I don't know whether we had got Jimmy to unload the car or not, but he stayed there, did his first year, and he made law review, which is the honor society in law. And then he came back, and as I said, he went to Pace University. I think he stayed 2 weeks. We moved refrigerators and everything up there with some other friend that he got up there. And I don't like this. This school is no good for me. And then he finally, after he decided he was going to go back to law school, he went down to Seton Hall, and he graduated summa cum laude from law school, and he worked for Arthur Anderson. Then he worked for the IRS. And what I used to get a kick out of Jimmy was, because we used to go down and pick him up down in Newark almost every day to come home. He didn't drive down to Newark, and he'd say, "Just don't mess with the IRS." But what made him leave the IRS was the fact that when he used to go, he went anywhere from Virginia, Florida, Alabama, any place they had a case where he'd have to go. Well, they'd give him his living money, mind you, $100 is what they would give him. They got a hotel room, and they couldn't live in just any hotel room. They'd have to have an $80 a night room back in them days. That's what he had to pay for. And he says, "It's going to cost me money. What am I going to eat? Taxi cab, whatnot." And mind you, this is the government. His boss told him, "You know how to do that? You charge double for a taxi fare, you charge double and triple for your lunch, and that's how you get along." Well, if anybody here knows Jimmy, that wasn't in Jimmy, and that's what made him give up the IRS and go to criminal law. Jimmy had quite a few big cases. In fact, one of the biggest cases he had was in Jersey City, and mother over there used to wash his client's clothes. When the client had to go into court, Jimmy bought him a suit of clothes. This guy was found guilty. He was supposed to be getting the electric chair, or gas, I forget what it is here in Jersey now, and he got him off for 20 years. Well, Jimmy made the front line newspapers. When this guy ended up in prison, a lot of you people don't know about Budcat Simon. He was a motorcycle cop, a motorcycle rider that killed a state trooper. And when this fella got into prison, he met Mudcat Simon. He was telling him about Jimmy. And he had almost, his last appeal, he had one more guy to come in for appeal. And he heard about Jimmy, and he wanted Jimmy to do his appeal work. Well, they found to find out Jimmy knew one of the judges and she says, "Jimmy, he's guilty of sin. I know he is, but this guy made a mistake. His appeal lawyer. We can't, and unfortunately, this Mudcat Simon, he was murdered right in front of the guard with a skeeve knife. So that ended up. But anyhow, Jimmy he was really in partners. He was in with this other lawyer, and this lawyer used to tell us, he says, "I've learned more about the law from your son than I learned in law school." And Kenny, his brother, has got a funny story. You know, people die, and when they die, they don't forget family, and they don't want family to forget them. And I had to go to summer school. So I get in there, and I'm doing the work, passing the test, and I hand the stuff in, and the teacher says to me, "Mr. Hardaker, yeah, what are you doing in this class?" "Well, I flunked it." "Not according to your paperwork here." "How come?" "Well," I says, "it's probably because of which my son, the lawyer, was. I was out in the ball field playing balls, skipping class, and not paying attention, you know." And he says, "You know, you don't belong in this class. You're only wasting your mother's money." But anyhow, that's why I could feel for Jimmy. In fact, there's one math teacher, Mr. Bennett. His mother had to go into school because Jimmy was flunking math. And he says to my wife, "You know, Mrs. Hardaker, I'm known here in the high school as an easygoing math teacher. Anybody that flunks math in my class has to work hard at it." She come home, you know, and she couldn't believe. "You mean he worked hard?" "Yeah, he had to work hard to flunk in my math class. I know he can do it, you know, but..."
And what did I reply?
Pardon?
And what did I reply? If they made him at least get a C,
Right. He'd want an A.
or he wouldn't be able to play football, he'd get an A.
Yeah, yeah, yes, yep.
Football was everything.
Oh, but anyhow, what happened to Kenneth?
He's on his way down.
Huh?
He's on his way down. He was taking his siesta.
Oh, okay, because this story is quite funny, and what happened to me when I went in the hospital, my daughter Lynn had another incident, and it's ironic that, you know, because people go, it doesn't mean to say that they're gone and they're left. Lynn, I'll turn this over to you. Where are you hiding?
Lynn?
Where'd she go?
Both of you are being coming now.
Oh, here's Kenny.
To reiterate a part of the story, am I being asked or am I being told?
And there, I want you to relate.
I think that one's up. Here, what's the other?
Ken.
I can't get him on camera over here. All right, he's going over there.
What is it I'm supposed to be?
I want you to relate our stories
How Jimmy is still around.
on your Christmas tree and how Jimmy has not left us.
Oh, yeah.
What happened when you went to the house?
Everything.
It goes around each cooking.
Yeah, it does. Actually, after Jimmy had passed away and my father was in the hospital, nobody was staying at the house, so I was taking care of Jimmy's dog, a bit of a crazy long-haired German Shepherd that nobody wanted to go near. Zeus, yes, Zeus was a little bit crazy. Zeus was locked up all day long. He stayed in his cage, and I would come out and let him out and do what he had to do, and then feed him, water him, let him run around the backyard for a little while, and then put him back in his cage. Well, one day I went back over to the house. Now, I was always very careful with Zeus because he would have ripped my parents' house apart. He was crazy. So that cage was locked. I went back one day to let him out, only to find that Zeus was not in his cage. His pen.
Zeus was someplace he had refused to go since the day Jimmy had died, which is upstairs in my brother's room. That wasn't the scary part. Scary part was on the in the living room. My brother had very specific habits. Okay, he did the same things over and over again. You could count on him like clockwork. All right. One of the things he liked to do, because he got in trouble for laying on the couch and putting his head in the arm of the chair, my mother used to tell him he was ruining the couch. He would lay down directly in front of the couch with the pillows on the floor. Well, not only was the dog upstairs where he normally had refused to go, he wouldn't go up those stairs since the day Jimmy had died up there, but on the living room floor were the pillows. Exactly where Jimmy lays down on the floor, exactly where he would have put them. And they weren't there the day before when I left. The pillows were on the couch at the other end of the couch, and the dog was firmly locked up. So I came home, and my wife says, she says, "What's wrong with you?" She says, you're very pale. You look like you've seen a ghost. I said, "No, I didn't see the ghost, but I have a feeling he was paying a visit." So what we had was my Christmas tree every year after Jimmy had passed away fell over numerous times. I tried everything. I tied it up. I redid how I put it up. I tried everything under the sun. Every year it would fall down. I'd fix it. It would fall down again. There was no explanation whatsoever. So finally, Dara says to me, she goes, "Is there something that you've done that irritate your brother or something that he could be paying us a visit, knocking over your Christmas tree?" So skip that. We're
No, it was finally at the end. You had done all the pies, and the only one who stood was the one that he loved, and all the other pies went on the floor. Remember?
yeah, but
The only pie that remained was that one pie.
to cut the story short, my brother, as my mother will tell you, in fact, it was one of the last big fights that I had with him the holiday before. Marianne made peach coogan today. It's a recipe that we got from my grandmother. Well, I made those every holiday, like clockwork. That previous holiday, I was not feeling like making them and said I wasn't going to have the peach coogans, and he pitched a fit, as he was very common to do, and he said to my mother, "You have to go see him and tell him he has to make this." This is a man who would literally call his nieces playing Snoopy and the Red Baron songs in the background to wish them a Merry Christmas. So I finally decided that maybe he was upset because he wasn't getting his peach coogan. So from that year on, I delivered to his gravesite a slice of peach coogan like clockwork. My Christmas tree does not fall over any longer.
Lynn, you're next.
What?
What happened when I went to the hospital?
Oh, you have to have Brittany tell that.
Oh, okay.
Brittany's
Nope.
No, Lynn, you're going to have to.
Mr. I'm stubborn over here. All right? I'm not paying any attention on a Sunday morning, and I get up and I'm going, "Why aren't you at church?" He goes, "I just kind of don't feel too good. I think that Dunkin' Donut I ate wasn't too good." I go, "Oh, okay." He says, "I got gas." So after we had gone through the heart issue with him 12 years earlier, I said, "Where's your pain?" And he told me. I said, "No, I don't think this is gas. Come on, let's go." So long story short, everybody knows that, Dad had the mass in his colon, and I had a feeling when we took him to the hospital something wasn't right. But he got the diagnosis. He got admitted to the hospital. Being the eldest child here, I was the one that had to call the immediate family together, and Grandpa and his grandchildren are like this. So I kept telling Brittany, everything's going to be okay. Everything's going to be okay. Dara and Ken had Mom over here, and I get a phone call from my daughter. She's stopped over here to check on my mother, and she's in tears. And I'm going, What's the matter? Grandpa's going to be okay. He's in good hands. He'll be fine. She goes, No, Mom, you don't understand. There is a rainbow over the hospital, and it's not raining. She said, Uncle Jimmy put it there, which means Grandpa's going to be okay. So, yeah, we do kind of, we kind of do have those stories, and my daughter will tell you to this day. When she was younger, she heard it, and she still hears it. She'll act up, she'll do something, and I'll just turn around and look at her and go, Okay, Uncle Jimmy, whatever you say. This one and my nephew, Daniel, are cut from the same cloth as him. And we just kind of feel like Jimmy's still around. Do the odd things happen? We went shopping yesterday. Walked into the store and I looked down on my shirt and there's a ladybug perched right on my shirt. And she looked at me and I looked at her and we said, Uncle Jimmy knows what tomorrow is. He's here. Right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Those, as I say, people tell you about tales and you're kind of, skeptic about believing them. But so many these things have happened, and everything reverts back things that he would do. Now, it's talking about, we call Brittany Jimmy Jr. because she's a lot like him. And one of the reasons is this. That's a funny story. When Jimmy got out of law school and he started in his practice, he had a Lincoln Town car, okay? A big Lincoln Town car. Well, what he used to do was pick up Brittany and take her to school. That wasn't enough. Jimmy, the type of person he was, he put a chauffeur's cap on him. And he'd drive Britt up to school, and he'd get out, and he'd open the door for, and the little kids would go, you got a chauffeur bringing you there? Jimmy was, he was quite a cut-up. I think he takes that somewhat after me, but, things do happen. Even though, as I say, he takes it, like most people that are alike, we had our differences too. And, but it's great to think that, somebody that's gone, everybody in the family, they see things that happen, and it wouldn't happen if it wasn't on a Jimmy. So,
Question and answer time.
Pardon?
I said it's question time. Did you cover everything?
Yeah. I ran through this whole thing, and I've asked him if there's, any other questions or whatnot, because, this is a first, and I want you people to know, as many Hardaker get-togethers as there has been, family get-togethers, this is what you call a first reunion, because we have people here that have had the Hardaker name, they're related, and it's great, to get together. That it reminds me of the days when the old folks down south or up in New England, they had their clans and their get-togethers. People today, they don't even know who lives next door to them, especially in apartment houses. They don't even know who comes and goes. So I appreciate each and every one of you for being here, listening to what I have in the past, and all that I put there on paper is really from memory. And sometimes I can't believe myself, because people will ask me something, I'll say, yeah, this, and that. How do you remember all that stuff? Oh, someday, when it's time for me to go, I'll make up with the rest of them. Thank you.